coming for you, Rachel. And this time, I'll get you.
Zelda Goldman is truly one of the most memorable and unsettling characters in 80s horror. She's featured in the novel for Pet Sematary as well as the film adaptations, and she's the older sister of Rachel Creed. Her backstory is a key part of Rachel's trauma and the overall theme of death and guilt that run throughout the story. So let's dive into Zelda Goldman, a character that absolutely haunted my childhood dreams. Let's begin with the origin. Pet Sematary, the novel, released in November 1983. In the novel, Zelda suffered from spinal meningitis, which is a debilitating disease that caused deformity to her spine and caused her body to waste away. As a result of that, she became bedridden and in constant pain. Rachel, who was a young girl at the time, was left alone to care for Zelda while her parents were away, and this caused deep resentment and fear in Rachel because Zelda's appearance and behavior became increasingly more grotesque and frightening as the disease progressed. On the day Zelda died, Rachel was left alone with her, and Zelda began choking and ultimately died in front of Rachel. She was terrified, but also relieved by Zelda's death, which left her with intense guilt that's haunted her into her adulthood. It's this guilt that really makes Rachel especially sensitive to the themes of death and unnatural return in Pet Sematary. In the 1989 Mary Lambert film adaptation, Zelda was played by Andrew Hubestek. This made an unusual and very effective casting choice because at the end of the day, he was a male actor in female prosthetics, and not only female prosthetics that made him look like a shell of himself. Zelda's body is twisted and skeletal with a deep, raspy voice, and this makes her character so uncanny. I think we can all agree, though, that the most chilling scene in the film is when Zelda is laying in bed calling out to Rachel, almost mocking her, yelling, "You'll never walk again, Rachel, never walk again." Honestly, it is one of the greatest movie moments from the late 80s. Okay, moving on to the 2019 film, an absolute mockery of the original in my opinion. Zelda is now played by Alyssa Brooke Levine, sticking closer to the novel's version of Zelda's condition. The film focuses more on Rachel's guilt and the traumatic memories tied to Zelda's death. However, in this film adaptation, Zelda dies after falling down a dumbwaiter shaft after trying to get her own food. I don't necessarily love the change here. It's less relatable to the bedridden Zelda from the source material, and I feel like it changed something that was very effective to begin with. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the remake whatsoever. But let's talk about why Zelda is so effective. Zelda's character works so well in horror because she does embody the fear of death and disease and even decaying. Fears that tap into our own discomfort with mortality and the human body being so vulnerable. Rachel's guilt is layered with the fear of becoming her sister both physically and emotionally, and Zelda represents not only our own fears of death, but also the fears of becoming incapacitated and grotesque throughout our lives, a true human feeling. Stephen King has said that Rachel's story with Zelda was inspired by his own childhood fears surrounding death and illness, which ties into the larger theme of the book. The inescapability of death and the human tendency to outsmart it, even when the outcome is way worse. In Dance Macabre, King mentions the idea of someone slowly wasting away, and the helplessness that comes with it is one of the most terrifying concepts he could ever think of, which is why Zelda's story comes with so much weight. She represents the idea that some things are worse than death, like the pain of lingering illness and the horror of witnessing it firsthand. In the 2019 adaptation, Zelda is definitely more grounded in reality, with a focus on the medical horror of her condition and not just the visual appearance. And this makes her death, the falling down the dumbwaiter, feel definitely more tragic, but less nightmarish at the same time. It's a great example of how horror itself has evolved since the 80s, from more body horror into more psychological trauma-based horror. Zelda, though, taps into our fears of witnessing suffering and the complicated emotions tied to caregiving and death. Before we close out, let's talk about Andrew Hubestek and the casting choice. He brought an uncanny, like I said, an otherworldly feeling to Zelda. His long limbs and distorted frame, combined with practical effects, created this nightmare that made Zelda feel as if she weren't human. His physical acting, twisted posture, and strained voice add the sense that Zelda is not just a memory or person, but an actual embodiment of Rachel's greatest fears. The question that Pet Sematary poses at the end of the day, after all, is it better to let go or try and hold on even when it's completely natural? And I feel like we can all agree that sometimes dead is better. Thank you for listening and watching episode 3 of Side Character Deep Dive. If you like videos like this, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you very soon. Sayonara, Spooky Fam.